Thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. This is the webinar on improving quality in the supply chain, and it's the first part of a four-part series of webinars, and we have a lot of material to cover, and I'll do my best to cover it in the time allotted. If you could, I just want to do make sure that you could hear me. If you all could hear me, just send me a message in the chat box. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That is awesome. Okay, so that's good to know. All right, so as I said, we have a lot of content to cover, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be here doing this webinar. It's one of my favorite topics, and please be ready for a very charged and intense session. And for those of you who have done our Improving Quality in the Supply Chain course, I'm sure you've had a very, very, very robust learning, and I'm happy again to be here delivering for you today. So pretty much what we're going to be covering today would be how to link the procurement function to customer requirements, how to the concept of linking our suppliers and assuring that our suppliers are capable of understanding and meeting our customer requirements. We'll be going through cost of poor quality. We'll be going through how to reduce risk in the supply chain and how to reduce the risk of poor quality in our supply chains. And of course, methodologies on how to improve supply chain process capability to enable your organizations to gain competitive advantage. So some quick basics on quality. And if you give me 1 minute, I need to clear this. I need to clear this screen. Okay, great. Right, so quick quality basics. It's very important that us as procurement professionals, we understand why our organizations exist. And ideally, our organizations exist to create value for our customers and our stakeholders. This is the core purpose of the existence of our organizations, our businesses, and of course our procurement function. And we have to understand the role that the procurement function and the supply chain function plays relative to the enabling of the creation of value. The supply chain and the procurement functions in particular are in a very, very unique position to enable our organizations to realize their mandates and their mission statements. So with that said, value has very particular requirements and specifications, which we'll be going into a little very deeply a little later on. And quality, what is quality? Why is quality so important? In the procurement arena, much emphasis is placed on price, delivery, quality, and our payment terms, which, as you know, our payment terms would affect our cost of money and would affect our cash flow situation. So quality essentially is the conformance to specifications, needs, and requirements of the customer. So quality should always be viewed as it relates to, or it should always be viewed in the eyes of the customer. The customer dictates the parameters of quality, and our organizations are there to realize those requirements. And it's very important that supply chain and procurement professionals understand the concept of defects. And a defect is a non-conformance to these needs, requirements, and specifications. So the procurement function is mandated to ensure the acquisition and timely payment of mission critical inputs. These inputs are converted or enable our conversion processes to produce valuable products and services that meet customer specifications. So I think this is a very, very, very basic but robust at the same time understanding of quality, understanding of why our businesses exist, and understanding of value and value creation. So what do customers really want? The better we as procurement professionals and supply chain practitioners understand and get into the heads of our customers and understand really what do they want, the better we'll be at executing our functions. The modern customer wants their products and services cheaper, better, and faster. So cheaper, lower price, better products and services, more quality or enhanced quality, and they want their products and services delivered more quickly in less time. But when we look at lower price, greater quality, in less time, here we run into what we call a triple constraint. And many of us will put our hands up and say, well, if they want it cheaper, but they want more quality and they want it faster, they can't have all three. So if they want a product of higher quality, it's going to cost more. So they're going to have to pay more for it. So to put it another way, if our organizations are producing a particular product and our major clients or customers come to us and say, you know what, we want a better price point, you want it cheaper. And us as procurement professionals, we could relate to that. But also, we don't want you to cut corners. We want you to increase the quality at the same time. And guess what? We need you to collapse or to reduce the lead times. We want you to shorten the lead times. So if the lead time was 3 weeks, you want it in 2 weeks. You want it at a lower price point, and we want it at a much higher quality point. So the average mindset or the typical mindset would be, this cannot be done, but yes, it can. And I'll prove this later on as we get into the slides. And it's not, I'm going to limit in this webinar, the theory, and I'm going to get into a lot of practical ways that we could apply a lot of these concepts. And I'm going to go into some work, some real world situations where lower price points, enhanced quality, and reduced time was actually realized. So I have a critical question, and I want us to reflect on this. Actually, two critical questions. Can they get all three? And think about that as the webinar progresses. Also, I would like us to reflect and think about our quality management system, and think about our personnel in the quality department. Do they care if about the price points? Do they care about the timelines? What are their major concerns? And from my experience dealing with several quality practitioners, their major concern is compliance and making sure that the products and the services meet the specification. The price points, the business side of it, timelines, that's not their concern. So if it takes more time, because sometimes they want to increase inspection points, etc. If it takes more time, and more time usually equals to increase price point and increase cost, that's not their concern. Their concern is making sure that the products and services are meeting specifications and they're compliant. So it's very important that we think about that. So value has three components, and it's in order to improve and enhance quality in the supply chain. It's very important that we understand the dynamics of value add, and we understand where the typical organization is in relative to value-added activities and the whole concept of value creation. What's the typical mindset? What's the current degree of performance relative to meeting customer requirements and specifications? So value has three components. So value add has three components. That there's a physical transformation of raw materials and inputs from one stage to the next. All associated activities are done right the first time, and the customers are willing to pay for the output or resulting products and services. So there's a physical transformation from one stage to the next. All activities, all associated activities with that transformation are done right the first time. And thirdly, that the customers are willing to pay for the resulting products and services. On average, the average company on this planet operates at no more than 10% value add, meaning that no more than, on average, no more than 10% of the activities in their supply chains. And if you break down the supply chains into the several components, meaning the actual supply chain components, the enabling processes, the marketing functions, the finance functions, the cumulative sum of, on average, the average cumulative sum of activities do not exceed more than 10% value that meets those three criteria. Done right the first time, physical transformation from one stage to the next, and the customers are willing to pay for the resulting output. And then about 30% of the activities in the typical supply chain, in the typical business, about 30% of those activities do not add value, but they're essential components, maybe inspection points, some auditing procedures, accounting procedures that do not they don't transform the product. They do not add value, but they're essential elements of work. It's about 30%. And the caveat for today, one of the caveats, about 60% on average of the activities in our supply chain, in our business operations, if you look and analyze our own procurement function, the activities that exist in that function, about 60% on average are non-value added waste. And I'm going to go into what are the categories of waste in one of the next slides. So the key to improving quality in the supply chain is to understand many things. But one of the things that we need to understand is that we have to reduce defects generated from the supply chain processes, the conversion processes, be they upstream processes, the supplier side, even the enabling processes that give enabling support, information, etc., to our supply chain and conversion processes. So defects We have to reduce defects. We have to reduce any type of deviation from those specifications and delays. So the 3Ds, or some practitioners call them the 3 devils of business operations: defects, delays, and deviation from specifications. And it is very important that there's a balance between technical acumen and business acumen. And what I mean by that is there, in many organizations, you would have some folks who are more on the technical side. I don't want to beat up on any particular discipline, right? But they're more on the technical side, and they see things in a siloed way. They see things within their discipline, and they would not have, or they don't possess the understanding of business, the business side of it, and the parameters that govern good and healthy and profitable business decisions. And then you have some folks who have strong, heavy business acumen, but their knowledge gaps on the technical side. So the idea is to have that healthy balance, and to us as leaders and procurement leaders or supply chain leaders, to continuously improve our skill set, so we strike a balance between technical acumen and business acumen. That balance is very important to enable supply chain synergies. So waste. I mentioned before that 60% of the activities in our supply chains are waste. And if we are serious about improving quality in the supply chain, we have to understand these dynamics. So every time we produce a defect, non-conformance to specifications, it's a defect. Every time there's overproduction, waiting, somebody's waiting for materials. Just picture people on our production line, they're waiting for materials, or they're waiting for some type of information. Neglect of human talent is another waste. Unnecessary transportation in our supply chain is another form of waste. Unnecessary inventories, motion, and excessive processing. Excessive processing, touching something more than necessary. And motion, all these are what you call the downtime elements, and it's very important that we understand this, and that we understand that there's a strong relation between time and quality, and we'll get deep into that soon. So if we understand the time impact on quality, that's another critical element for us to be able to improve the quality in our supply chain. And it all starts with understanding customer requirements. To me, this is a very important start point. To understand customer requirements, to understand what constitutes value in the eyes of the customer. So this here is a customer requirements matrix, and I urge each and every one of you to understand this and to be part of the construction of such a matrix, if one does not exist in your organization with this level of detail. I think it's very important, because if all of the processes in your organization, in your supply chain, your logistics processes, your manufacturing or conversion processes, the procurement function itself, your suppliers, your finance, your R&D functions, if all of the functions converge on this here, really understanding and prioritizing customer requirements, you're on the road to improving quality in your supply chain and realizing competitive advantage. Before we get into this slide, a very common mistake I see on a regular basis is to think of quality solely in terms of products. So it's you have a phone, the quality of the phone is the car, the quality of the car. Um, um, so this is a very common mistake. So it's very important that we look at quality in multiple dimensions. This will enable us to have a better understanding and a more holistic understanding of supply chain systems. So in this situation here, this customer requirements matrix, and you could translate this matrix into your situation, your particular situation, if your organization does not have a customer requirements matrix. This is the heart of your operation to really understand this type of tool. So this is for an organization that sells soups. An organization that has several outlets, and they sell soup to the public. So it is very important to understand that in terms of customer requirements and customer needs, you will find that if you were to write down all of the requirements of the typical customer, you will have maybe dozens, maybe 30, 40 requirements. But if you were to ask the customers which ones are the most important, the critical requirements, the critical customer requirements, meaning that if your supply chain or if your organization does not realize those requirements, there's a major, it will be considered as a major failure and a major customer dissatisfaction. You will find there are usually about 3, 5, or 7 critical requirements. A lot of times it might be 3 or 5. The others, the customers, if there's non-conformance to those requirements, the customers may be a little more tolerant, but there's some requirements that there's really no compromise. If we don't deliver, our processes and our supply chain is not capable of delivering on those requirements, it could yield tremendous loss of competitive advantage and market share and erosion of profitability. So in this particular supply chain, and in relative to the customer requirements, we detected 5 critical requirements: timeliness, assuring that the correct product was served, the quality of the product itself, the right temperature, and the warmness of service. And it's very important to understand the customer requirements in terms of those critical requirements by order of importance. So even though that these were the 5 most critical requirements, they weren't all equal. So if we look at the column all the way to the right, we'll see the importance to the customer on a scale of 1 to 10. And we'll see that timeliness is the most important characteristic or requirement. The most critical requirement is timeliness. And if you go straight down, the last one, important but not as important as timeliness, and the others are warmness of service. So another way of looking at this now and extending this matrix out, have a better understanding of, and the key is to understand, to reflect at our supply chain, to reflect at our processes, and see where are we, what is our current state performance relative to those critical customer requirements. What are the gaps? What's the current performance? And we'll see a on the right of the matrix, we would see the column there with the percentage gap, and there's a numerical value of the gap, and the column all the way to the right, this is an index to prioritize which one of these areas have the most severe degree of non-conformance or gap. So it is very important that another very important element of improving quality in the supply chain is to have operational definitions, that every element or every function and every department, including the suppliers, including the customers, are reading off of the same page, and they see the critical elements of a supply chain, that there's a common terminology and understanding and collaboration. And operational definitions are very, very important. So this column right here, the second column, operational definition, for example, for timeliness, that will be soup served under 30 seconds, right? What to measure, that's the next column, number of seconds from order to serve. The customer expectation was 30 seconds or less. So this is a customer requirements matrix. Very, very important for us to have a good understanding of their requirements, and it's the spearhead of improving quality in our supply chains. So having a systemic view of procurement and the supply chain is very important. So a supply chain is made up of suppliers, inputs, process, outputs, and our customers. So our suppliers are responsible. We must assure as procurement professionals and supply chain practitioners that we have reliable, responsive, capable suppliers who are aligned with our strategic objectives, who are responsible for delivering high quality inputs at the right price points consistently all of the time, not some of the time, all of the time. And another critical facet of the supply chain is our conversion processes or manufacturing processes, and to ensure that they're capable, they're robust, and they're able to create and to transform and convert the raw material inputs into useful products and services that meet our customer requirements. So the suppliers are supposed to deliver the critical inputs at the right price points, on time, at the right quantities to our conversion processes, who are responsible for converting those raw material inputs into useful products that are shipped via our logistics function to our customers, and they meet our customer requirements. So this essentially is the supply chain. And if we break down each one of these components in what we call COPQ, suppliers, input, process, output, customers, there's a critical key. There are critical keys there in improving this quality in the supply chain, and we'll get into those issues. So here's a chart that I had used in a previous webinar, but for those of you who have seen this chart before, I hope that I'm able to shed more light on the importance of looking at things in the COPQ, and the value of COPQ thinking and systems thinking relative to improving quality. So the outputs of any process or any supply chain are a function of the input variables and the process variables. So for example, this COPQ chart is one for a theoretical pizza chain. So if you look at the suppliers to the process, right, the customer will supply an order, and of course the The staff would supply their labor and their skills and their talents. The driver would supply and enable the logistics function, the delivery component, and of course, this vendors or suppliers or vendors would deliver the critical inputs of ingredients, boxes, and other equipment, etc. So to really have a positive impact on the quality or the output of any supply chain or any process, it is very important that we understand that the inputs and the processes, the conversion, the processes that convert those inputs, that intersection has to be on point, has to meet specification, has to be top class. And what I mean by this is that if you have processes or conversion processes that are capable of executing of the raw material inputs with a high degree of precision, in a very sophisticated way, if those inputs that go into that process or conversion mechanism, if the inputs are compromised, then the output is not going to meet specification. And if we have inputs that meet specifications, high caliber, high quality inputs that go through processes that are broken, not capable, and the processes that have a high degree of variation, then the output still would not meet customer specifications. So this is a critical key. So one of the things that I recommend we do is to look at our critical processes and think 80-20 and 450. And what I mean by that is 20% using the 80-20 rule, 20% of the variables, the process variables and the input variables in our supply chain drive 80% of the non-conformities, 80% of the defects, 80% of the cost of poor quality. So if we could hone in on those elements, we hone in on those 20% of the processes. So now because this is a big effort. To improve quality in a supply chain is a big effort. We could start with the 20% of the processes that drive 80% of the defects or poor quality. Or better yet, a variation of the 80-20 rule is a 450 rule. 4% of those processes drive 50% of the defects or poor quality in our supply chain. So we could focus on identifying and isolating those 4% of the processes. Now we laser focus. Now we're not trying to boil the ocean. That is another caveat for the day. To improve quality in any supply chain, do not try to boil the ocean. Laser focus, 450, 80-20. Start with the 450 and then go from the 450, roll it up to the 80-20 dimension. So once we identify those processes, then we break down those processes and we analyze them. We look at the inputs, right? We analyze the inputs. We look for redundancies. We look for defective inputs. For example, in this particular process, right? And I put this line here in red because here is like for procurement folks, just look at this where I have this box here, this circle, and we'll see ingredients, right? We would see pizza boxes. Two critical inputs that go into this process. If the ingredients are defective, if the boxes are defective, we're going to have issues. We're going to have defective product. In one of my previous webinars, I spoke about the pizza boxes. Imagine getting boxes that are not capable of for this or suited for this type of function. And picture the delivery person actually reaching to a customer, and the box falls apart and the pizza falls on the floor, and then the customer is upset, and the customer calls the location and says, oh, you know, delivery guy came, right? He was late, so there was a delay, right? And the pizza fell apart because the box was flimsy, right? And then the customer says, well, I want my pizza. So now the delivery guy has to go back, right, to the store. They have to make that pizza again and deliver to the customer. And the customer says, you know what, and I don't want to pay for it because, you know, the guys, you know, pizza's supposed to be delivered within 30 minutes. Now it's an hour. So I want it for free. So all of those efforts were done and the customer did not pay for it. So think about running a business where that happens on a regular basis, right? So us as procurement professionals, we have to make sure that these critical inputs, the inputs that we are responsible for procuring, and in this case, it's right here on this slide. Procurement professional will be responsible for procuring the ingredients, the boxes, the equipment. You have to make sure that the procurement person is responsible for making sure that the inventory counts are correct, especially in environments like this. Some environments are very sensitive to excessive inventories and miscounts. You're dealing with food environment, you're dealing with food environments that have like produce and dairy items that expire quickly. Excessive inventories could be problematic. So to hone in on and analyze and to study, this requires a lot of study. We study those inputs and we study our processes, and I'll go through some dynamics of process study as we continue. And we look at our processes for the waste, the unnecessary transportation, unnecessary motion. In a process, how many times something is touched unnecessarily? Is there overproduction? Why is there overproduction? Right? Is there any waiting? Is products waiting to go from one stage to the next? And I see I have a question. Hold on 1 second. Someone has a question. Okay, so here's a COPQ chart for order management for placing orders, right? So we can apply this methodology, this science into any environment, healthcare, service sector, government, manufacturing. We could apply the COPQ methodology. It could be applied across the board, where we analyze our inputs, we analyze our suppliers, we make sure that our suppliers have the capability, we make sure that our suppliers are aligned to our corporate mandates. We ensure that our suppliers are capable of meeting our customer requirements, and we share those customer requirements with our suppliers. So this involves a lot of study, a lot of collaboration, and the supply chains that are most collaborative are the most successful. It's as simple as that. So, and again, a lot of study. So value stream mapping, another way of understanding our supply chain to look for areas where we could improve quality. So this is one for a manufacturing plant that involves cutting. You see the critical processes here: cutting, printing, binding, and then the final inspection and the finished goods storage and being shipped to the customer. On this side here, we have the raw material delivery. And it's very important, as I said, that we have to understand time and the impact of time on quality. So here we see the raw materials are sitting for 20 days. Now, if our raw materials in this particular environment or any environment or your environments, if again, I mentioned expiration, we have to as much as possible reduce the amount of time that inventory sit. In this case, 20 days, and you will find that some products to the actual cycle times, and we understand cycle times. So the cycle time is the time taken to execute each step in the process. And then you have wait time. So you find between processes are where a lot of opportunities exist. In between processes where most of the time is consumed. So the wait time and plus the cycle time is equal to the lead time. And I've seen a particular process where the actual work in the process was 45 minutes and the lead time to ship was 40 days. So 45 minutes of work to produce 10,000 items. It was wire baskets. It was 45 minutes of work, but the actual lead time from order to ship was 40 days. So a lot of the time, the products and the raw materials sat and waiting in between each of the processes, and that's where a lot of the delays are realized. A lot of delays exist. And here's one for healthcare. And in healthcare, what is quality in the healthcare environment? A passionate service that was timely, it was passionate, and the staff was very had good bedside manner, etc. So the quality or the quality dimension or the quality characteristics or the critical quality requirements in healthcare would be different from a manufacturing plant. Similar for education, it would be different as well. So for those of you practitioners who work in the healthcare space, again, value stream mapping and systems thinking is a very powerful mechanism to be able to detect areas where quality could be compromised and where we could find areas of opportunity. For those of you who procure in the healthcare space, you see I put here in the circle supplies. So supplies are part of the healthcare system. If you put the COPQ chart, or you put a COPQ chart for healthcare situation, supplies are critical input. So with this particular situation was actually based on a real situation, we see that the cycle time for this patient to be treated and to be discharged, the actual work in the process was 120 minutes, and the actual wait time was 285 minutes. 285 minutes. So, and you could see a lot of the time was consumed going from admit to diagnose, from diagnosis to treat, and then from treat to discharge. And we see that right here is where a lot of the time is consumed in between the process steps. So the wait time was about 2 3/4 times more than the actual treatment time and cycle time. So this could be considered a very poor quality service. So again, the value stream map, a very good and robust tool that we could use to look for opportunities where we could improve quality. And here you see, very important that we understand if we really map and analyze our activities, don't be surprised if they look like this. And this was actual work to understand the value stream in the healthcare environment. And if you do this at your companies, you'll be surprised what you see. You know, each activity, just get the post-it, write them down, put it on the wall. And usually when I do this exercise, I see the jaws drop. They're like, oh my God, this is what we do. And a lot of it is just unnecessary, redundant, multiple systems, duplicated efforts, and errors and defects, and not meeting customer specification. So another critical way that we could look and analyze and look for opportunities to improve quality in our supply chain. Again, this one was based on a real world situation. I call it XYZ Cafe, soup serve company that had 3 soup servers on the line to serve customers at the rush hour, and the time that the customers would have liked their soup to be served was 30 seconds. They didn't want to be there more than 30 seconds to be served their soup. All right, so this is rush hour in New York City. And we see that the person in the middle, Jill, was the only one who was meeting that specification, was meeting the customer requirements. And we see Jack here, Jack on the left, and we see Jason here on the right, not meeting the specification. So again, this requires study. So what I did was I studied the time, and we did a time study, and we were able to assess the time. Like this serve here was about 47 seconds. And I looked and we studied what was Jack doing when he served each one of these, what was the cause of each one of these times being outside of the 30-minute specification point. And on the right hand side here, we made a key, and you see what each one of these meant. So the idea to how this was improved was we trained the staff and removed all of the obstacles that put them in this type of situation. And this entire team was brought into the green, primarily in the green zone. And the green zone is where you want to be in terms of specification. So this is another way that we could look for opportunities to improve quality in our supply chain. So this particular operation also had a manufacturing component. We went upstream to the manufacturing component in terms of quality, and we realized that again, with as far as the specifications in one of the prior slides was the customer requested a high quality consistent soup, and there were issues with consistency. So we went upstream and we identified that, and we realized that they have these big pots where they cook the soup, and then the next step in the process would be the soup will go into the fill line or the fill machines, and the fill machines would fill some big, I think it was like 5-gallon bags or sacks of soup. So we realized that in between, there was a 27 minutes to do a changeover from one soup to the next. It took 27 minutes to clean the machine, the fill machine, to have it clean and ready to go for the next soup. And while that was happening, while it took 27 minutes to clean the fill line or the fill machine, what was happening to the soups, the next one in queue? that waited for that's one of the ways it waited for 27 minutes. So a lot of times the staff would turn the heat down, but still the pot is still holding heat, and this compromised the quality of the soups. So we were able to look at why was it taking 27 minutes, and we studied the pattern of the operators. We looked at where the inputs were located in the room, and we noticed that there was a lot of unnecessary motion and transportation and waiting in that process and over processing. And we eliminated those elements, those waste elements, and we got the process down to 6 minutes and 30 seconds. And that dramatically improved the quality of the soup. So creating the case for action. The best way to do this is to quantify it in terms of dollars. You want to improve quality in the supply chain. It's a monumental effort. And once it comes into effort, we don't want, a lot of times you don't want to bother with it. We just want a quick fix. So if you quantify the dollars that should be allocated to the cost of poor quality, they could be staggering. That's 60% of waste. Remember, the 60% of waste in the typical process, the dollar amount could be staggering. Now, this dollar amount, 350,000, was for one of the locations of XYZ Cafe. I can't say the name of it, but for one of 20-something locations. Now, just go figure, right? So to quantify it, and you bring this to the finance folks, then it would change the mindset. So it's a mindset change. So couple methodologies that could be used to improve quality in your supply chains are the Kaizen model, or plan, do, check, act. Plan, you identify problems. Do, you test solutions. 3, you check to see how effective those solutions were. And if they were effective, then you go on to the next inline process. If they were not effective, then you see what the gaps were, what could be tweaked to make those solutions work, or you come up with new solutions. So plan, do, check, act. And it's a continuous cycle. Improving quality in supply chain is a continuous thing. It's continuous improvement. It never stops. Another very important model that could be used to improve quality in the supply chain is the DMAIC model. The define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. You define quality. You define what the customer perceives as value. You define what are the current gaps or problems or issues that exist in your supply chain, and you measure the impact of the gaps that exist, and you measure and you quantify the impact on the customers and the business. And then you analyze, you look for root causes that are driving those problems. You look for the root causes, and then you come up with effective solutions that are a direct response to the root causes of those issues. And then you put the processes and the systems in what we call statistical control, with an effective response plan, that if there's a slippage going forward, we know what constitutes a slippage or a backslide of performance, who's responsible, what are the actions that the prescribed actions that they take, and when they prescribe those actions. And the key is to create and to collaborate, I should say, pockets of excellence. So this is a lot of collaboration, it's a lot of effort. Collaborate and look and create pockets of excellence. For those procurement practitioners, your own procurement office you could create a pocket of excellence there. You could start there. You could start in the warehouse. Look at your warehouse grid Is it disorganized? If it's disorganized, is there unnecessary motion and unnecessary transportation? Do you have unnecessary inventories? Are your processes, your enabling processes, or whichever process in your supply chain touching something more than once? Is there underutilization of talent? So create a pocket of excellence. Don't try to boil the ocean. If you want it, this is caveat number 3 for improving quality in the supply chain. Do not try to boil the ocean. Create pockets of excellence and move from one pocket to the next. And the cumulative sum over time of excellence and process and quality improvement would yield one big improvement. And again, focus on the 20% of the processes in your supply chains that drive 80% of the issues, 80% of the defects, 80% of the cost of poor quality. Again, calculate your cost of poor quality, and there are ways of capturing those elements and share those elements upstream and downstream. So as far as the make model, and you're going to go through this as quickly as we can. As far as the make model is concerned, some of the steps in the define phase, and the objective is to define the nature of a business problem. You want to define that. And it starts with selecting the right projects, because once we start looking at issues and downtime and waste, we will see that many processes, if not most of the processes that exist in our supply chain, have this issue. And again, we laser focus, right? You're looking at the 4% of the processes that drive 50% of the defects and non-conformities to customer requirements in our supply chain. So we're looking at a few, the critical few processes, the mission critical processes, and we make sure that we select the right project. We develop an effective project charter, so everybody's on the same page, 1 to 2 page document. We prepare effective problem statement where we describe that statement. This is the problem that we're trying to address. And the anatomy of a good problem statement is that it articulates how long a problem has been occurring. It articulates the magnitude of the problem. It articulates which process, and it articulates the impact of that problem on the business and the customer, and how long that problem has been occurring. And a good project charter would have an effective business case, which is a motivational tool, which the anatomy of a good business case articulates essentially the rationale for embarking on a quality improvement project, the rationale, and it articulates that if a particular project is not deployed at a particular point in time to address a particular problem in your supply chain, particular quality problem, that the impact on the customer and the business will be as such, which is a very, very motivational tool. And you assess the ability of your supply chain to sustain change, because change is a very, very, very uneasy phenomenon for most of us to digest. And we understand our stakeholders, all those who will be affected by a particular project. We do a clear analysis, and we make sure that all projects, quality improvement projects, are aligned with our strategic mission, and there's strategic linkage, and there's a shared vision around such improvements. So in terms of selecting the right projects, the key is to do the right projects right, and we have to make sure that we have the necessary criteria, right? A good project should have a strategic fit. It should be able to be executed in a reasonable amount of time, with good cost, good return on investment. So the cost benefit analysis must be there. And we have to make sure we have the technical feasibility, and the savings target is worthy enough of deploying materials, resources, and time to such an effort. And we are sure that we will come up with a pipeline of projects, and we prioritize those projects that do not meet our criteria that we set up. We just, what we call, we kill the project. We just don't do those projects. So we see on this matrix, that improving the timeliness of the soup serves or the soup serve process is the best project to do, or should be done prior to any other project. And updating the POS system at this point of time, that doesn't make any sense, so that project should be killed. Okay, so doing the right projects right, very important. Here's a project charter with your problem statement, business case, and it assigns roles and responsibilities, and it makes sure that the scope is clearly defined. You want to improve quality in the supply chain, you're going to do projects, make sure that the scope is clear and everyone understands the scope. Because again, I mentioned about boiling the ocean, so you have to make sure that the start and the stop points of a particular process that you're going to address, or processes. If it's more than one process, you're gonna a certain section of a process, that's very, very clear, and the scope and the timelines are very clear, and to guard against scope creep. Scope creep, meaning that you start off with one intent to work on one particular issue, and then you're working, and all of a sudden you're working on 10 issues and nothing gets done. So these are all elements of the change assessment, of the defined phase, understanding the 20-60-20 rule, that in terms of resistance to change and stakeholder buy-in is very important, that on average 20% of people in your environment will support change, and they'll support these quality improvement projects. 60% of the folks will be on the fence, and you have to persuade them, and then 20% are going to resist you outright. So the key is to work on the 60%. That's the critical mass. Because 20%, they're going to support you. 60%, they're not sure. The 60% is where you have to focus. A lot of times we focus on the negative folks, we try to bring them in. That's only 20%. If you get that 60% in-house to support you, now you have the 80%, you have the mass, the critical mass. And then you could give the coup de grace, as I say, to the 20%. Are you going to help, or you're going to be in the way? And always answer, what's in it for them? Think about the stakeholders. What are they getting from helping you improve quality in your supply chain? Right, and again, you have the critical criteria here for stakeholder analysis, ensuring your strategic linkage. In terms of measuring, you develop, of course, your customer requirements matrix. You measure the capability of your process, and you quantify time wasted and dollars wasted. You determine your gap in your process relative to customer requirements. Executing quick wins, very, very important to execute quick wins early with any quality improvement project. The anatomy of a quick win is that whatever you do is low-hanging fruit. It's irreversible. It does have a significant impact on the customer requirements. So it does have a significant impact on the customer requirements, but whatever changes you make, they're reversible, and it can be done they're cheap, and it can be done in very quickly. So those are the characteristics of what you call a quick win, and it's very important you execute them, as many as you can, early, while you're working on the bigger issues. If you have the resources, you have a couple people that could help you execute quick wins, and then you have another group that would deal with the more complicated and complex issues for improvement. Could do it that way. So again, here, time studies, understanding time and motion analysis. In this case, this is a service environment. Well, it's a mixture of, well, it's a supply chain that has service components. And as I mentioned before, service time, the specification was 30 seconds, right? No more than 30 seconds. And we see here, Jack, we saw his times, and this was actual data. Jill, all of whose services were under the 30-second mark. And you see the average for Jack, 43.48, and then for Jason was, again, his average was above the requirement. And every serve that was above 30 seconds was a defect. So to be able to analyze and understand and quantify your defects, again, for those who would consider some of this theory, this was actually done, and a huge amount of money was saved. I'm not going to get into this right now. This is a more complex issue because we over the time, but understanding takt time. And for those of you who want the slides, you know, I could send you the slides. And if you have any questions on some of the slides that I didn't have time to cover, you could let me know. So we see the store average 33.8, again, above the requirement. And measuring process capability, defects per million opportunities, very, very, very important metric to understand. If you have a product or service, how many opportunities exist for a defect, and for every million parts or every million serves or services, what is your defect rate per million opportunities? And if you look at it that way, as opposed to using a percentage, sometimes percentages could be misleading. And if you look at things that way, you would see that when you look at it as defects per million parts, so in this case, defects per million transactions, the numbers could be staggering. And understanding your process capability. Utilization of histograms to really analyze defects. And in another methodology here is, this is a hybrid COPQ chart with time studies, and I was able to cost out this process, and this process actually has 65% waste, 20% value add, which was high, and 14% non-value added essential components. So this actually did penetrate the average 10%, but still 65% waste. And this was quantified. The dollar amounts were quantified. We did the time studies here, and we see in this section here, transportation, this for each step in the process, the amount of time that was consumed in transportation and motion and non-validated essential work and over processing, and the actual value added time elements that existed in the process. And we were able to analyze the inputs, and there was one, what do you call it? We realized that the ladles that they were using to pour the soup was the wrong size ladle, and this created overpouring and spillage on the sides of the cup. And then the employees had to wipe, and this consumed a lot of time. So the inputs were inappropriate or not suited for the application. So again, this type of work requires intense study of the inputs and the different elements that affect time, and time does impact quality, as I mentioned, with the changeover on the fill line in the soup manufacturing plant. And this process here, because the servers could not meet the customer time requirements, a lot of the product at the end of the day was not sold on a very regular basis, and or the product was sitting and the quality became compromised. So time does impact quality, and to understand that concept is very important. So again, the triple constraint: time, quality, cost. If we reduce the non-value added work in our process, we eliminate and reduce the amount of transportation, motion, and wasteful activities in our process. In theory, we will be spending less time creating or converting raw materials into finished goods if we remove the unnecessary time and motion and over processing. That means, in theory, we could produce products and services that are cheaper. However, we could spend or redirect some of that time to focusing on quality. So back to the initial conversation, could customers get all three? Improve quality, improve supply chain quality. Could we realize that at a lower cost? Yes, we can. And the key is to eliminate waste, focus on customer requirements. If we focus on customer requirements, we redirect that time and that effort and that energy and those resources, and we focus on customer requirements. We simplify our processes. We take the redundancies out. We take the waste out. Yes, we could make products cheaper, better, and faster. So I hope this webinar was of benefit to you. I just want to go quickly into root cause analysis. So we went through some of the tools and the activities in our measure phase. The root cause analysis, or the analyze phase, we go into determining what are the root causes, and then we look at our, again, systems thinking, right? What exists in our environments? Our environments are made up of a lot of time machines or equipments, a layout, materials or inputs, people who have skills, metrics or measurement systems, processes, suppliers. All of these are part of our supply chain and our systems. And in this process in particular, we had a particular problem, and you look for how are machines contributing, how is the layout, and the layout in this particular process was flawed, and the layout created unnecessary movement of people. So we have to understand flow and flow dynamics. Again, the movement of time and people, transportation and motion, and excessive transportation, excessive motion in this process slowed down the process. That process, and that created or resulted in the people on the line, the people in this process, not being able to serve customers on time. And timeliness is one of the critical quality requirements. This also resulted in a huge material waste or unsold product. And picture all the activities that went into creating those soups. If you go upstream, the procurement of the raw materials, the conversion, the manufacture of those soups, shipping the soups to 20-something locations, then those soups are going to refrigerated temporarily. Then they will be withdrawn and they'll be put behind the counter and positioned for the customers to buy, and then huge amount of unsold product going into the garbage. Now that's more work. You have to pay somebody to put it in the garbage. Just think about that for a minute. And this happened a lot until we looked and we determined the root causes, and we realized that 80% of 82% of the soups were in the wrong position. That was one major fix that we did to re-engineer and to reduce the amount of unnecessary and waste in this process. Again, remember I mentioned the cleaning of the cups. That's over processing. It's not necessary. Once we eliminated these things, then the process is sped up, and then they were able to meet the customer demand, the time requirements and the quality requirements. Right? We remember we improve on the changeover, reduce changeover time. Product was good, serving a respectable amount of time. The staff was courteous because they were less stressed out. Fewer people called out. So there were many cases where in this particular situation, there was a lot of call outs, and at the critical point in the supply chain, or the manufacturing process, and then now the actual serve to the customer, the last logistics points and the processes broke down. So you're able to fix this process all the way back to the manufacturer side. Continuous improvement projects, and saved a huge sum of money. So again, understanding the root causes before we get into improvements, very important. A lot of times you want to improve quality, and we have a problem and you jump straight to solution is not always a good thing to do. It's better that we understand the root causes. In the meantime, we have to act. We do the quick wins. We do as many quick wins as possible to build credibility and momentum while we determine the root causes. So once we deal with problems at the root cause level, the last caveat for the day, if we address problems and we improve and we deploy solutions at the root cause level, we'll be more effective in sustaining the improvement. We'll be more effective in removing the obstacles and the constraints that create those problems, and we would not have a reoccurrence. If we don't deal with the problems, if we don't deploy solutions and we jump the gun and we deploy solutions and they're not at the root cause level, you're going to have reoccurrence. All right, so it's very important that again, we look at the systemic factors, the equipment, the machines, the layout, the materials, the people, the measurements that we're using, right? In this case, to measure, they were using the wrong size, what they call it, the ladle was the wrong size, so that was flawed. That created a problem. And we didn't understand, they didn't understand what they call the TAC rate. And the TAC is the tempo at which a product or service must flow through a process, right? If you can't keep that rate, it's you're gonna have huge bottlenecks that could, but in this case, it did compromise quality. And the TAC rate is calculated by understanding the net available time divided by the customer demand. So you have to understand customer demand, the net available time, you'll come with the TAC time. And if you understand TAC time, again, understanding time and how it impacts quality. And this was a particular, very, very critical case where time affected quality on different levels. Here we have spaghetti analysis. Again, the logistical movement of the people behind the counter. We eliminated a lot of this stuff and improved this process. And understanding our flow of people and materials, how we push or pull. And in the next, the continuation of this webinar, we'll continue from this point. So I hope that you all enjoyed the webinar for today. It's a lot of information to put in such a short period, but we would continue in webinar 2 on improving quality in our supply chain and some of the tips and the tricks and methodologies that we could use to realize this. If I have any questions, I'm gonna be here for a while. Just shoot me your questions. Does anybody have any questions? Hi, Arlene, you had a question? Hello, Arlene. How are you? Hi, Arlene, you have a question? Does anybody have any questions? Hello, Arlene, you have any questions? Does anybody have any questions? Hi, Robin. How are you?
Hey,
How are you, sir?
doing good.
Yeah, good to hear. Where you calling from, Robin?
I'm in India.
Oh, wow. Oh, welcome. I'm honored. You have any questions, my friend?
I don't think so. It's just that the value you've already covered that the value stream mapping can be used for the service industry as well. So
Oh,
the
absolutely.
answer to
Oh, yes. Because a lot of times we get into Robin, we get into matters of quality, right? And a lot of
that.
people who present quality, they do it from a manufacturing, right? So a
Hmm.
lot of times ask the question, could we apply these concepts in service? So I come from both manufacturing and a service background,
Hmm.
and a lot of times I had to deal with both service and manufacturing. Like in this particular scenario, we had manufacturing and we also had service. So I was dealing with the entire end-to-end spectrum. And service sectors do have a supply chain. Everything has a supply chain, you know. But value stream mapping, absolutely, absolutely. What type of process do you have?
Well, I'm into the outsourcing, so most of the time it's the IT request which we normally get.
Oh, well, you have value stream there, my friend. If you look at all of your, you look at all of your processes,
Hmm.
right? And then the key with the value stream mapping, Robin, is to make sure, and I didn't mention this earlier, to make sure you go in the right levels. So you have a level one, level two, level three processes. I don't think you should go lower than level three because you could go down to level four and five. And what I mean by that is, okay, so a level one process is a core process. So like finance is a level one
Hmm.
process. IT is a level one process, right? Um, Marketing is a level one process. So what you could do is, in a case like this, and it's on the enterprise level, you could look at the IT function, uh, one of the main things that they have to do, then it goes to the other section, and it goes to the other section, and then you could look at the value stream that way. Then you could take a particular function like the IT function, and you could break it down into sub processes, your level twos, right? So
Hmm.
you could take
Yes.
examples in procurement, in supply chain, right? You have the
Hmm.
procurement function, which is sourcing and purchasing, right? That makes up the procurement function, right? So
Yep.
procurement is a level one, right? And then sourcing is a level two process. Now in sourcing, what are the activities in sourcing? Step one, step two, step three, step four, right? So those are like level threes. So you could do a macro value stream and you could do the micro value streams.
Mm-hmm.
So the key with this is not to be rigid, to be flexible. And yes, you could definitely apply this to your situation, and you'll find that sometimes to go from one step to the next, right? The time is consumed in between those steps. You see where you have the arrows? Look
Mm-hmm.
out for the, you'll see. Um, you ever heard somebody they say, "Oh, something's going to take 10 minutes." Yes, about 10 minutes worth of work, but it took 2 hours. Why did it take 2 hours? The value stream will detect that, and the value stream is very powerful for understanding opportunities where your quality is being compromised, and to look for opportunities to improve quality. The flow charting, I didn't go into flow charts because flow charts don't really give you that visual. It just tells you this is what you do and this is what you do, this step and this step and this step. The activities, right? But the value stream helps you to pinpoint where your time is being consumed. And time does impact quality, my friend. If you're in service, oh my God, time, people want it now and they're rubbing, no, I want it yesterday. I don't want it today, I want it yesterday, right? And if you're late, that's poor quality, correct?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so the value stream is very, very, very and just my friend, just get a pencil and a piece of paper. You don't have to use all these fancy charts. Just get a pencil and a paper and just write it out on a stopwatch and really look at the activities and you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised what you see. And then from with the value stream, where you have the main blocks that I showed you,
Mm-hmm.
what you could do is you could use post-it notes and write all the activities that go to that block. Step one, step two, step three, step four, step five. And you put this
Okay.
together and you'll be surprised.
Yep.
You'll, you'll be very surprised and measure your time elements. But you could definitely use it. If you're working in an office environment, make sure you do your spaghetti analysis, right? The
Mm-hmm.
flow. Let's look at how people flow around. Remember that chart that I did? Remember the
Mm-hmm.
chart that I did with the guys behind the counter? This
Mm-hmm.
one here, you see it? You see it
Yep.
there?
Mm-hmm.
That's just a silver cup. That's a couple soups. Just a couple of them. That's how they move around, right? And they make mistakes. They give the wrong thing or they're stressed out.
Mm-hmm.
So this process was cleaned up where there was movement because you have to move, but there was limited movement. And what I mean by movement, if an employee is going to get something or to do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
The emotion. If that employee goes to get, let's say, raw materials, the process, you're walking or you're going to get raw materials, right? This is motion. Once you once you bring in those raw materials to the point of use, that's transportation. If you this time, just draw the path of how people move around, and you do the distance travel and the amount of time that they spend in those waste elements is staggering. So the value stream and the spaghetti analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Spaghetti analysis. And the spaghetti analysis could be for information flows too, my friend. Back and
Okay.
forth and back and forth. Emails back and forth. I send your email, you send me back an email. And they send Tom an email and they send Jane an email to do what? One thing. Why can't be from one person to the next?
Mm-hmm.
So you could do that for so the key with this, brother, is flexibility. It is flexibility. Okay, my friends, I hope I was helpful, giving you some more insight on that. And it's a study. You have to study. It's a different way of looking at things. But yes, you can deliver higher quality. You could do it cheaper, right? And you could do it in less time. If you focus on time, focus on time, where time is being consumed, right? You eliminate the waste. You redirect some of that time to quality. You simplify the process. You remove the redundancies. You'll be spending less time in total. Less time, less cost. if you remove all the busy work and the non-value added work, people will make less mistakes, Robin. If you
Okay.
have people moving like this, they're going to make mistakes. If you reduce mistakes, right, then you reduce defects. If you reduce defects, you have a higher quality level. So yes, you can realize cheaper, better, faster. It can be done. I do it all the time. I'm a practitioner for almost 20 years with this.
Oh, that's nice. That's good to know.
Yes. So if you have any questions, you have my email. You need any advice? This is why we're here. Next Level Purchasing. We're very passionate about helping professionals, procurement professionals, supply chain professionals improve at what they do. So you have my email, correct?
I don't think so. Can you share that over?
Sure. It is D Millington, Millington. So D Millington, Millington at nextlevelpurchasing.com. Then we're going to have a part two of the webinar. I'm going to continue because I have like over 100 slides. I'm going to continue on this. So I'm going to be going on the manufacturing side and the service side as well. I'll be sure to add some what they call it IT components there as well.
Sure.
All right. So,
Thanks a lot.
I hope you enjoy the webinar, sir.
Definitely. Sure.
Okay. So you have a great day and thank you for attending, Robin.
Sure. Have a great day to you as well. Bye bye.
You're welcome. Bye bye. Hi, Arlene. Are you there, Arlene? You have any questions? I'm going to be here for a couple more minutes. Okay. So that is it for today's webinar. Thank you for attending. And we're going to have part two of this improving quality in the supply chain webinar. Part two will be next couple of months. We do this quarterly, so we have 4 webinars a year on these retention webinars. And I strive to add some value and add some of my experiences to the body of knowledge that exists in our improving quality in the supply chain course. Very robust course delivered by Next Level Purchasing Association. Thank you again for attending and have a great day.